Hi, I'm Carrie,
And I'm Nina.
and we're Forget Him Not. We want to tell you how you can use crayons to help remember the Lord. Do you remember your very first box of crayons? I remember as a kid, I always wanted the one with the sharpener in the back.
Oh yes, those are the
Because
best.
you know, that was the best. You had to have that. But do you remember the way they smelled when you got them?
And all the colors. These are the older ones, but those nice sharp points were on the end of them, and that
Like
brand new box.
Like a brand new unused box.
Yes.
That's like the best. Was it not when you were a kid? And crayons are probably the very first art supply that kids are going to be introduced to. And honestly, you never grow too old to use crayons.
I was going to say, now in our society we have adult coloring books, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, people have learned that so we can relieve stress by just coloring, or our minds can wander, or it can just be a great relief for you at the end of the day just to take a crayon and color. You don't have to be a kid. We can be kidults, and we can all enjoy crayons.
I still appreciate a good brand new box of crayons that haven't been destroyed.
Yes.
Destroyed by kids. So maybe so I need to get a new box just because I'm looking at this box now going, the grandkids have been a hold of me. But we want to tell you how you can use crayons, different ideas to use crayons, and some maybe you didn't know how you can remove crayons, which is important if you've got kids, from surfaces.
Yes.
And
and it's also important to know what these are made out of, because if you understand what they're made out of, you can also understand how to remove it.
yeah, you can that, and if you understand what they're made out of, you will understand why what we're about to tell you is we are crayon snobs.
Yes.
Art supplies, we will tell you, go to kids, buy cheap. You don't need to spend a lot of money on art supplies. Please spend money on crayons. Please
Yes,
don't
because
buy cheap crayons.
the crayon industry understands that there is a mixture of pigment and wax, a ratio of the two.
And the kind of wax.
Yes, and the more wax, the less color. The more pigment, the deeper and richer the color, and the smoother it is.
Well, obviously, pigment is going to be more expensive than wax. So to make a crayon, you're going to have that pigment and the wax needed to distribute your color. And the cheaper crayons use more wax and less pigment. But before we knock that too much, there are instances where we would say buy the cheap crayons, because some art projects work better with a cheap crayon. But if for your coloring pleasure and for your children's coloring pleasure, Crayola is the only way to go.
Yes.
It is the best crayon to color with and the best coloring experience, and we're going to show you why.
Crayon actually got its name. The name crayon means mark of the earth. Now this could be anything. A rock can make a mark of the earth.
Anything.
A stick you can make but that's actually the original meaning of the word crayon. It is a mark of the earth.
And it's that's in a form that you can hold
that you can mark.
and mark with. So it could be, as she was saying, anything in nature. It could be anything man-made that leaves a mark when you rub it with against a texture. And the way the crayons actually work is the friction is what distributes the color. So you think about sand, rocks, and coal, and other things that you can use that are in nature, you could actually color and make a mark with.
Yes, and because there's also natural pigments, you know, in the leaves and in the rocks and things that will actually leave a color also too.
But somewhere along the way, man discovered that you could mix pigment with the wax in a stick form, and you could hold it, and it is so fun to color with.
And children love them.
Adults. I love them.
Yes.
We want to show you a few different ways that you can mark the earth and leave a mark for the Lord like a crayon. So I have a brown in Crayola and a brown in an off-brand. So first, let me show you how smooth a Crayola is. And I'm going to color very light. Now you can see that this paper has a little bit of texture to it, unlike, say, copy paper. I'm going to color light. I'm going to bear down just a little bit more. And then I'm going to color dark. Now, what's happening is the wax and pigment mixture with the friction are leaving a mark on the paper. Now we're going to take the cheap crayon. I'm going to color light. And I can tell you already, my coloring experience is not the same. I'm working harder to get this to distribute the same amount of pigment that the Crayola did. I'm gonna color a little darker and a little darker. Now this is one, and I'm gonna show you another off-brand. Already, I can see how much wax is on this paper and less pigment. And I'm gonna go a little darker. And do you see how it's leaving behind? Let's see, can you see that? Do you see how it's leaving behind little pieces of crayon and wax, the wax from the crayon? Now, I know what's gonna happen when I do here. Yeah, can you see that? Do you see that? Ugh, that's so frustrating when you're coloring. Now that doesn't happen as much with the Crayola because there's more pigment here than wax, and that's what we're leaving. See, even the tip of this crayon has got gunky stuff falling off of it. That's not fun. Now, this is just to show you the difference in when you color and the pigment distributed. I can tell you right now, this is a really cheap crayon, and you can feel the wax a little bit here, and it's just smooth. So that is one way that crayons are definitely different in your coloring experience. Now, another thing that we like to tell kids when they're starting out with crayons is when you color, do slow, slow, close together. Slow, slow, close together, and stay in one area. Lots of times kids like to do this in their coloring, and they get in a hurry. Well, what happens is you're putting a different amount of pressure to distribute the color, and it's going to leave behind darker areas and lighter areas. And if that's what you want, then that's great. But if you're trying to color something a little bit neater, you just want to teach them slow, slow, close together, and work in an area and feel the same amount of pressure. Now, if I want to make the pressure or this darker, then I can either do another layer over it or press down a little harder. But stay slow, slow, close together. And you can even layer that darker in over for a fun little different coloring trick. Make sure you teach kids slow, slow, close together, work in one area at a time, and then venture out. And you can even layer over crayons. Not using those, you can layer over your color with another crayon, but you're only going to be able to layer as much as the amount of wax will allow you to. The whole reason the crayon works is the wax and pigment dispersed onto a surface. Let's see, you can see there's a little bit of texture to this paper, and then here is just copy paper. And you can see the smoother the paper, the less texture on the paper, the smoother your finish is going to be when you color. And just to be fair, we'll use a blue. Now I'm coloring just as light. Do you see all this? Jumping around. I'll go a little darker. You can really see it on this smooth paper. See, that just doesn't make for a, look at that. That does not make for a fun coloring experience as a kid nor as an adult. So this is where we would say Crayola is going to trump every time for just coloring experience. Now, where this is going to be better for your project is if you're trying to break it down with, say, a baby oil or a solvent, or if you need more wax, like with a watercolor resist with crayons, that's going to be where you want a cheap crayon because more wax, more resist. But for just coloring, you just can't beat Crayola. Not right now. I haven't found one that we liked more in the kids' art supplies. Because crayons are made with pigment and wax, that means an oily solvent will dissolve the wax. Like a baby oil happens to be that. So what it will do is when you color with crayons, the wax distributes with the pigment and it builds up. And so the baby oil breaks down the wax and it leaves the pigment behind. Similar to kind of a watercolor effect. It's just a fun way of using a crayon in a different way. Now, this is one of those moments where the cheaper the crayon works better, because the more expensive crayons are going to have more pigment, less wax in their recipe. And the cheap crayons are going to have less pigment.
For this one, you need more wax.
More wax, because you want to break it down and get rid of it. So you can play with the crayons and see the difference for yourself. We also discovered that not only is there baby oil, but there is actually a baby oil gel.
And we wondered, will this work as well as the baby oil?
It worked
And
really
we found
well.
out that it did. It worked fine.
I actually liked it better, because the oil tends to get, if you put too much on your Q-tip, you're going to use a Q-tip to rub across your crayon, and you'll see it and feel it as it breaks down the wax. The gel doesn't get so saturated in your paper.
It also allows you to control the oil and where it's going.
So let's have some fun trying and experimenting with this, and then what can you create using crayons and baby oil? All right, I'm going to show you how you can break down crayons using a Q-tip and some baby oil. And what this will do is it's going to break down the wax, leave behind the pigment. And it's going to give you an effect that's kind of smooth, like a watercolor. Now you can use regular baby oil that's very liquidy, but it does saturate the paper and it doesn't dry and it leaves behind an oily residue. Where this new baby oil gel, I'm very pleased with this. This has been really fun to play with. So I'm just going to take a little bit here. You don't want to use a lot. And I'm just going to start breaking down. I'll break down the darker area first. Now, because there's more pigment here in the Crayola, remember the top one is Crayola, then do you see how pretty that breaks down the color, like a watercolor? Now, if you keep rubbing, I can break this edge down too. And it's just a fun way that you can blend crayons. Now I'm going to do it again, just a little bit on the medium, just so you can see the difference. Do you see where it's grabbing a hold of that wax buildup? And just kind of blends it out. Now, it doesn't break down the Crayola as well as it's going to break down this. Let me show the difference here. Get the light color. All right, and now let's do, you'll really see it on this one. Do you see it's taken away that waxy buildup? And leaving behind the pigment. And it gives you a watery color effect. Now this is where cheap crayons are better. If you want to break it down, the cheap crayons are going to be the ones you want to choose. You see that? And it's basically made it smooth with no waxy buildup because it's dissolved it. And it's just a fun way to blend. Let's do this lighter area. It's just a fun way to blend crayons. We want to show you a few little ways that you can use a crayon and watercolor resist in a way to surprise and amaze your kids, encourage your children, and send them secret messages.
Yes, if you have a little detective in your life, you can write messages and then they can uncover the messages.
Now, just a regular watercolor crayon resist art project would just be the waxy crayon resisting water, because wax resists water, and that's how you can color with crayons and cover your whole painting with watercolors. It is just a fun art treatment.
Yeah.
But you can take a white crayon on white paper, write a message.
Yes.
You are loved.
Yes. We all love you. You're special.
God loves you. God sees your value.
Mm-hmm.
You can write them all kinds of reminders, and don't tell them.
Just leave the papers around and allow them to have the creativity with the art supplies to uncover your message.
Set out your watercolor.
Yep.
And then we'll show you how it works so that you too can leave a message for your children. This is a fun way that you can leave a message for your children to discover when they apply watercolor. It's going to be a watercolor and crayon resist. I have a white crayon, white paper. So we'll just write, let's just write a message real quick. And remember, I'm using that cheaper crayon, so I'm getting some little residues that you can just knock off. Or you can do what I just did and break the crayon for pushing down too hard. Once you have written your message, I'm gonna knock down that just a little bit, then give your children watercolors, water, paintbrush, and your piece of paper with the secret message on it, and then let them paint over it. So let's leave a message for someone to find.
Right now, then we're going to see what message Carrie left for us. I'm going to take a paintbrush with just the water, and I'm a pink girl, so I'm going to put a little bit of pink on that watercolor on it, and let's see what the message says. What's happening is the water is being resisted by the wax, and this, I'm gonna freak out a little bit, put a blue in there too, because we just can, and we make a pretty purple as they mix together. And all of a sudden, when your child is just having a good time with his watercolors, they've been left a message that says, "You are loved." And there you have a secret message that you just revealed to your children, or whoever you're doing this for.